The moment his phone rang, the wedding stopped breathing. One name glowed on his screen, Sophie, and with it, the secret he'd buried under money, power, and a diamond ring. "Cole," her voice cracked, "I'm in labor, and they're yours." "Cole, don't hang up! I'm in labor!" The voice slices through the church like thunder. $1,000 ring trembles between his fingers, the crowd frozen mid-breath. The groom, Billionaire CEO Cole Preston, stands at the altar, stunned, exposed, and 1 second away from unraveling everything. Every camera in Dallas is aimed at him. Every whisper in the crowd carries his name. Cole Preston, the man who never loses control, stands motionless beneath the grand chandelier of Crystal Oaks Chapel. The room is perfection, the bride radiant, the guests glittering, the future secured. Except his heartbeat isn't keeping time with the music. The phone buzzes again, louder this time. On the screen glows a single name he hasn't seen in almost a year. Sophie, the ex he tried to forget. The woman his family told him to erase. Every instinct tells him to ignore it, to finish the vows, to play his part. But the past doesn't wait for permission. Cole's jaw tightens. The officiant, Peter, clears his throat. "Mr. Preston, your vows." He can't hear him. He can only hear the echo of Sophie's voice, strained, breathless, desperate. "Cole, please. I need you." The air feels too thick to breathe. His fiancée Chloe stares at him, confusion spreading across her face. He shouldn't answer. Not here, not now. But he already knows this call isn't random. It's the kind that splits a man's life in two. One choice means comfort and control. The other means chaos and truth. Cole's thumb hovers above the screen, and when he finally answers, the world around him stops. "Welcome back, my beautiful family and friends. I've missed you all so much. It's been a tough ride with some technical issues, but by God's grace, we're getting everything back on track. Thank you for sticking with me. Your support means everything. Before we begin, I want to say a little prayer over everyone watching, especially the women. To the women, may God strengthen you, comfort you, and fill your heart with peace and favor. To the men, may God guide you, bless your efforts, and give you wisdom in all you do. And may God's protection rest on every single one of you. Amen. If you're ready for today's story, hit subscribe and tell me in the comments where you're watching from. My USA and UK family, I see you. And please watch till the end, because tomorrow I'll be dropping another story you wouldn't want to miss. Now, let's get into the story. The room fades. The murmurs blur. And as Sophie's trembling words echo through his ear, "I'm in labor, Cole. They're yours." The story rewinds to how they got here. To the Dallas. Nights when love was real, reckless, and forbidden. To the choices that built this moment of reckoning. Cole Preston wasn't always the unshakable billionaire who owned half of Preston Hollow. Once he was just a man who found peace in places his family never looked for it, like the small coffee shop off Jefferson Boulevard, where Sophie Daniels used to spend her afternoons sketching logo designs and sipping cheap lattes. That's where he first saw her. Bright eyes, an easy laugh, and a spark that cut through the noise of his boardroom-built world. She wasn't impressed by his suits or last name. When he'd first offered to buy her coffee, she smirked and said, "You can keep your money, Mr. Preston. Some of us earn ours." He hadn't stopped thinking about her since. What started as small talk turned into stolen weekends. She showed him parts of Dallas he'd never known. Street art tucked beneath bridges, soul food diners in Oak Cliff, in late-night jazz clubs that smelled like fried catfish and second chances. Around her, he wasn't the billionaire heir to a legacy. He was just Cole. But love doesn't live quietly when power listens. His family found out. His mother, Elaine Preston, the queen of Dallas society, whose words could silence an entire charity gala. "She's not our kind," she had said sharply, glass of white wine in hand. "And she never will be." Sophie didn't back down. "I'm not a secret, Cole," she told him one night when the whispers became too loud. "If you can't stand beside me in daylight, don't find me in the dark." He'd promised her he could handle it. He meant it, until the board threatened his reputation, the media speculated, and his family's fortune became leverage. The night it ended, she stood by her apartment window as city lights flickered behind her. "I'm not asking you to give up your empire," she said, voice trembling but steady. "Just fight for me." He hesitated, just long enough for the silence to answer for him. When he left, she didn't chase him. And for the first time in his life, walking away didn't feel like control. It felt like loss. Back in the present, the chapel felt like it was closing in. Cole stepped back from the altar, the phone slick in his hand. His pulse was a thunderstorm. "Cole?" Chloe's voice cracked through the silence. "What's going on?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. Her white dress shimmered under the chandelier, but the moment looked like a scene from someone else's life. A life built on performance. The phone slipped slightly from his grasp, and the crowd gasped. The officiant, Peter, tried to recover the room's rhythm. "Perhaps we—" But Cole was already moving. Slow steps first, then faster. Each one echoing across marble floors, shattering expectations that had taken years to build. Voices chased him down the aisle. "Cole! Son, where are you going?" "Don't you dare walk out that door!" He didn't turn back. Not when he reached the grand wooden doors. Not when Chloe's sob broke through the confusion. Because all he could hear was Sophie's voice from that call. Faint, labored, terrified. He pushed through the doors and into the sunlight. The Texas heat hit him like a slap of reality. Outside, cameras flashed. Reporters already gathering for a billionaire's wedding turned spectacle. The sound of his name filled the air, questions flying like arrows. He didn't stop. Ethan, his driver, spotted him immediately from the car line. "Sir, are you—" "Hospital," Cole said, voice rough. "Now." Ethan hesitated only a second before opening the door. The car door slammed shut, silencing the chaos outside. Inside, Cole's hands shook. His phone buzzed again, a new voicemail. He pressed play. Sophie's voice filled the car, weaker this time. "Cole, I'm at Dallas Medical. I didn't tell you because I didn't want to ruin your life again, but they're coming early. I can't just... Please hurry." Then silence. He stared at the phone screen like it was holding his entire world hostage. "They're yours." The words replayed until they didn't sound real. For years, he'd built everything to protect his legacy. And now, his legacy was crying for him in a hospital bed he'd never known existed. His mind flashed back again, to that night, months after their breakup, when he almost called her. He'd sat outside her old apartment, thumb hovering over dial. But fear had won. Now it was regret's turn to collect its debt. "Ethan," he said quietly, "drive faster." "Yes, sir." As the car sped through downtown Dallas, Cole leaned back and closed his eyes. Every choice he'd made played like a reel in reverse. The dinners, the press appearances, the engagement ring that felt more like a contract than a promise. All of it led here. When the car hit a red light, He opened his eyes and caught a reflection in the window. Not of the confident CEO Dallas worshipped, but of a man realizing he traded truth for image. Somewhere in the city, Sophie was fighting through pain he couldn't even imagine. She'd carried his children, his name in silence, and never once reached out until now. The weight of it broke something inside him. He pulled at his tie, loosening it until the silk hung limp. For the first time in his life, he didn't care who saw him unravel. The phone buzzed again. Another message from Sophie. He pressed play, hand trembling. "If you get this, just know I didn't want to make things messy. I thought maybe you'd moved on, and maybe I was okay with that. But they're coming, Cole, and they deserve to know their father." His breath hitched. "Twins?" he whispered. His throat tightened. She hadn't said baby. She'd said they. He felt the car lurch forward as Ethan changed lanes. "Cole, they're your twins." The replay echoed in his ears. The world tilted. This wasn't just about love anymore. It was about legacy, about life, about the kind of man he wanted to be when no one was watching. He turned his gaze toward the skyline ahead. The towers of Dallas shimmered like judgment and opportunity rolled into one. Have you ever lost the person who made you feel most alive, only to realize too late they carried your future with them? That's what Cole's facing right now. If you believe love deserves a second chance, stay with this story. It'll break and rebuild you. The hospital came into view, flashing red lights, sliding glass doors, a crowd already forming outside, reporters, fans, even wedding guests who'd followed in disbelief. Cole didn't see them, didn't hear the noise. He saw one thing, a set of doors that might hold everything he'd ever been too afraid to fight for. He looked at Ethan. "Stay here?" "Yes, sir." Cole stepped out, straightening his jacket, though his hands were still shaking. Cameras clicked, voices called his name, but his eyes were locked on the entrance. One step, then another. Every part of his life, every board meeting, every family demand, every empty luxury, led to this hallway. He whispered under his breath, half to himself, half to the universe, "Don't let me be too late." Inside the hospital, an announcement echoed over the intercom. "Emergency C-section, room 314. Patient, Sophie Daniels." Cole froze. His pulse thundered. Then he broke into a run. The car roared through Preston Hollow, its tinted windows reflecting the endless rows of manicured estates, his world, built on order and control. But tonight, Cole Preston felt neither. The city lights blurred past like ghosts of choices he couldn't undo. Ethan kept his eyes on the road, the GPS glowing between them. Cole's hand clenched the phone so tightly it might have cracked. Sophie's voice still rang in his ears. "I'm in labor. They're yours." Every second that passed felt stolen. Every red light felt like punishment. He closed his eyes, the past dragging him backward. A year ago. That night. They were standing in her apartment, bare walls, half-packed boxes, her face half lit by the neon glow from the window. She was moving to Atlanta for work, she'd said. Needed distance. Needed peace. "You can't love me in private, Cole," Sophie whispered, her voice trembling but fierce. "I deserve a man who's not afraid to stand beside me." He'd stood there silent, the weight of his family's expectations heavy in his throat. He wanted to tell her he loved her, that she made him feel alive in a way money never could. But his silence said everything instead. Sophie had wiped her tears, lifted her chin, and walked away before he could find his courage. He told himself it was better that way. Cleaner. Easier. But the truth? He'd been running ever since. Now the phone buzzed again in his palm. Another voicemail. He hesitated, then pressed play. "Cole, I didn't tell you because I thought it'd be easier that way." Sophie's voice came through, soft but breaking. "But they're coming early, and I'm scared. I can't do this alone." His breath caught. The strength in her voice was gone, replaced with exhaustion, fear, pain. He gripped the edge of the seat, knuckles whitening. "Hold on, Sophie," he muttered under his breath. "I'm coming." The car sped down the freeway, headlights cutting through the Dallas night. Each passing block felt heavier, like a countdown to something he couldn't yet name. Redemption, maybe, or reckoning. In his mind he replayed her laughter, her stubbornness, the way she used to trace her fingers over his wrist when she wanted his attention. He'd traded all of that for a future that looked good in headlines. Now that future was collapsing. He loosened his tie and looked out the window. Dallas blurred by. Neon signs, hospital lights, people living lives that weren't about money or family name. He envied them. A distant siren wailed somewhere ahead, pulling him back to reality. Ethan glanced at him in the rearview mirror. "Sir?" Cole met his eyes. "What?" Ethan hesitated. "The press is already outside the hospital." Cole exhaled sharply, jaw tightening. Then they'll get the story they've been waiting for. The car didn't slow down. The hospital room hummed softly. The steady beepings of the heart monitor, the faint hum of fluorescent lights, and the muffled chatter of nurses down the hallway. Outside, the Dallas skyline glowed. But inside, everything felt still. Sophie Daniels lay propped against her pillows, her breathing shallow, her curls damp against her forehead. Sweat clung to her temples, and every contraction sent waves of fire up her spine. But even through the pain, her voice was steady when she whispered, "You're okay, babies. You made it this far." Her hands rested on her stomach, tracing small circles as if to calm the two tiny lives inside her. Nurse Danielle, a woman with kind eyes and a calm voice, checked the monitors. "Your vitals look good, sweetheart," she said. "You're strong. You've got this." Sophie nodded weakly. "Strong doesn't mean ready." Danielle smiled gently, adjusting the IV. "He'll show up. They always do when it's real." Sophie looked away, her throat tightening. "Not all of them." The nurse didn't push. She just squeezed Sophie's hand once before stepping out, leaving her alone with her thoughts and the rhythmic echo of 2 heartbeats on the monitor. For a moment, Sophie closed her eyes. The last 9 months played like a slow montage in her mind. Late nights editing client videos in her small South Dallas apartment. Doctor visits alone. Her mother's worried. Voice over the phone, and the way she had to carry her belly with both hands when the weight got too heavy. She'd built her business quietly, one client at a time, hiding the pregnancy from most of the world. Not out of shame, out of protection. The moment Cole's name was linked to hers again, she knew what the tabloids would do. They'd call her names, question her motives. They always did when the woman didn't fit their story. A soft buzz interrupted her thoughts. Her phone lit up on the bedside table. A voicemail. The contact name made her breath catch. Cole. For a second she just stared at it, torn between anger and curiosity. Then, with trembling fingers, she pressed play. "I'm coming, Sophie," his voice said. Low, strained, desperate. "I swear I'm coming." Her heart stumbled in her chest. The voice she'd once fallen asleep to, the man she tried to forget. Hearing him again brought everything back. The love, the heartbreak, the promise he'd made, and never kept. Tears blurred her vision as she whispered to no one, "Don't break my heart twice, Cole." Another contraction hit, sharp and unrelenting. Sophie clenched the sheets, gasping through the pain, the monitor's rhythm quickening. Danielle rushed back in, checking the screen. "They're coming, honey," she said gently. "It's time." Sophie nodded weakly, gripping the nurse's hand. And as another contraction rolled through her, she looked toward the door and whispered, "Please, don't let me do this alone." Outside, the elevator doors opened. Cole stepped into the hallway, breathless, searching, and only a few rooms away. The moment Cole disappeared through the chapel doors, silence collapsed into chaos. For a full 5 seconds, no one moved. The guests, dressed in glittering gowns and tuxedos, just stared at the empty aisle where the groom had been standing moments ago. Then the whispers started, sharp, cutting, multiplying like wildfire. Did he just leave? Where did he go? Was that a phone call? And then someone screamed from the back, "Check Twitter!" Outside, camera crews swarmed the entrance of Crystal Oaks Chapel. News reporters who'd been invited to cover Dallas's society wedding of the year suddenly found themselves filming a scandal in real time. Microphones rose like weapons as headlines began to form faster than facts. Billionaire CEO abandons bride mid-vow. Cole Preston walks out of $5 million wedding. Who is the mystery caller? Inside, Chloe stood frozen at the altar, mascara streaking down her cheeks. Her white lace train pooled around her like a surrender flag. She looked down the aisle. No Cole, no explanation, just the echo of gasps and murmurs. Her father, Richard Larson, stormed forward, his face red with fury. "This is a disgrace," he barked, spinning toward Cole's mother. "Your son just humiliated my daughter in front of the entire city." Elaine Preston, elegant even in outrage, stiffened. "You think I planned this circus? My son was raised better than this." "Clearly not," Richard snapped. "Maybe he got that from your side." The guests gasped. The tension thickened. The officiant, Peter, who was still standing awkwardly at the altar clutching his notes, muttered under his breath, "I've never seen anything like this." Cameras continued to flash through the stained glass windows as the argument grew louder. A bridesmaid fainted. A groomsman tried to calm the crowd. The once perfect wedding was now pure spectacle, chaos wrapped in silk and scandal. Chloe finally broke her silence. Her voice cracked through the noise, trembling but sharp. "He left me. For her." The guests turned to look at her. Tears streaked her face, and her lip trembled as she stared at the door he'd walked through. "I knew he wasn't over her," she whispered, more to herself than anyone else. "I just didn't think he'd prove it here." Phones buzzed, screens lit up. The news alert spread like wildfire across social media. Breaking: Billionaire CEO Cole Preston abandons wedding mid-vow. Rumored call from X sparks chaos. In minutes, what was meant to be a fairy tale became Dallas's biggest headline. If you've ever been torn between what's expected and what your heart screams, you'll understand Cole's madness. This story isn't about scandal. It's about truth. Stay. You'll see why sometimes chaos is the price of love. Back in the dressing room, Elaine's phone buzzed, a call from her son. Her hands shook as she answered. "Cole, where are you?" His voice came through, steady, but strained. "At the hospital." She froze. "The hospital? With her?" He didn't answer. Her tone hardened, every syllable sharp as glass. "If you walk into that hospital, you're walking out of this family." The line went silent. Elaine stared at her reflection in the mirror, her perfect hair, her flawless dress. And for the first time, she realized control could shatter too. The moment Cole stepped out of the car, the world erupted. Flashbulbs exploded in his face, voices clashing in a storm of chaos. "Cole, why did you leave the wedding? Is it true your ex is in labor? Who's the mother of your child, Mr. Preston?" He ignored them all, jaw clenched, heart pounding as Ethan shoved a path through the crowd. Security guards tried to hold back reporters, but the questions followed him like gunfire. "Cole, are you the father?" He didn't answer. Couldn't. The truth wasn't meant for headlines. It was meant for the woman fighting for breath somewhere inside. "Back door," Ethan muttered, guiding him down a side alley that led behind the hospital. The service entrance was quiet, lit by a single buzzing light. The moment the door clicked shut behind him, the world outside vanished. For the first time that day, there was silence. Cole leaned against the wall, catching his breath. His tie hung loose, his perfect wedding suit now rumpled and undone. He wasn't the man the cameras worshipped. He was just a man trying to find his way back to the life he'd lost. Nurse Danielle appeared at the end of the hall, her expression flickering from surprise to recognition. "You're Cole Preston," she said quietly, eyes softening. "She's been asking for you." His voice was low. "Sophie Daniels?" Danielle nodded. "Room 314, but be quiet. She's resting." He started walking, each step echoing faintly in the long corridor. The scent of antiseptic mixed with the faint hum of machines. Every sound felt amplified. His heartbeat, his shoes, his guilt. He passed a nursery window where nurses gently rocked newborns under soft lights. One tiny hand reached up toward the glass, and Cole froze. His throat tightened. He had no right to be here, not after what he'd done. But fate didn't wait for permission. It just arrived and demanded answers. He reached the door marked 314 and stopped. For a moment, he couldn't move. His hand hovered over the handle, his pulse racing so hard it hurt. Then, faintly, he heard it, soft, fragile cries from inside. His breath caught. 2 cries. Slowly, he turned the knob and stepped in. The room was dim, lit only by the city glow, filtering through the blinds. Sophie lay asleep on the bed, her curls messy against the pillow, exhaustion written across her face. Beside her, 2 tiny infants were swaddled side by side, their chests rising and falling in rhythm. The sound of new life. Cole stood frozen, his chest tightening as a tear slipped down his cheek. He had built empires, negotiated billion-dollar deals, but nothing had ever felt this overwhelming. He took a step closer, afraid to breathe too loudly. Then one of the babies stirred, letting out a tiny whimper. Sophie's eyes fluttered open. For the first time in a year, their eyes met, and everything stopped. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the faint hum of the heart monitor and the quiet breaths of the 2 newborns between them. Cole stood frozen by the doorway, afraid that if he moved too quickly, the moment would vanish like a fragile dream. Sophie blinked twice, her eyes trying to adjust, her mind struggling to believe what she was seeing. "Cole," she whispered, her voice raw, tired. "You shouldn't be here." He took a hesitant step closer. "I had to be," he said softly. His voice trembled with exhaustion and something deeper. Fear, maybe. "They're mine." Sophie's expression shifted. Pain, disbelief, and something like anger flashed across her face. She turned her gaze away, blinking hard. "You left, Cole," she said quietly. "You chose them." Her words cut through the room sharper than the IV stand at her bedside. "Cole, swallowed hard, stepping closer until he stood beside her bed. "I know," he said, voice breaking, "and I was wrong." Sophie let out a shaky laugh that wasn't quite laughter. "You were wrong? Cole, that doesn't undo what happened. You disappeared. You let your family decide what I was worth." He sat in the chair beside her, leaning forward, elbows on his knees. "You think I don't know that? Every day since I walked away, I've been living with that silence. Every room, every deal, every speech, none of it drowned out your voice." Sophie didn't respond. Her fingers traced the blanket near the babies, avoiding his gaze. "They're beautiful," he said quietly, glancing at the twins. "I can't believe." He stopped, voice cracking. "I miss this." She looked at him then, eyes softening despite herself. "You missed everything, Cole." He reached for her hand, hesitating inches away. "Then let me start now." For a long second she didn't move. The air between them was thick, heavy with everything unsaid. Finally she whispered, "It's not that simple." "I don't care if it's simple," he said, voice low but firm. "I care that it's real." Their eyes met again, hers filled with exhaustion and guarded hope, his with regret and determination. The love that once burned between them hadn't died. It had just waited, buried beneath pride, pressure, and time. A soft knock interrupted the fragile silence. The door opened, and Nurse Danielle stepped in, holding a folder. "Sorry to interrupt," she said gently, setting a clipboard on the table. "Miss Daniels, the paperwork you asked for earlier, the adoption forms. You don't have to sign them now, but they're ready." Sophie froze. Cole's heart stopped. "Adoption?" he whispered, his voice barely audible. Danielle nodded, oblivious to the storm she'd just unleashed. "Yes. She said she wanted to make sure they'd be cared for, just in case." Cole turned to Sophie, disbelief flooding his face. "You were giving them up?" Sophie's eyes filled with tears. "You weren't supposed to know." The room fell silent again, but this time it wasn't peaceful. It was the sound of two lives colliding with the weight of everything they'd both lost. The silence that followed hit harder than any argument ever could. Cole sat frozen beside Sophie's hospital bed, his gaze darting from the sleeping twins to the adoption papers still resting on the tray. His voice was a whisper. "You were really going to give them up?" Sophie's lips trembled. "Cole, you don't understand." "Then help me understand," he said softly, the plea raw in his tone. Tears welled in her eyes before she could stop them. "I couldn't do it alone, not like this. Your world—" She shook her head, clutching the blanket. "Your world eats people alive. Every headline, every camera, every lie about who's worthy, enough to stand next to a Preston, it would have destroyed me. I didn't want them to live in that kind of shadow." She looked away, her voice cracking. "I didn't want them to be a secret, like I was." The words landed like a blow. Cole felt his chest tighten until breathing hurt. He reached for her hand again, this time not to defend himself, but to anchor her. "You were never a secret, Sophie. You were everything I was too afraid to fight for." She met his eyes, searching for sincerity. "Then why did you leave?" He hesitated. "Because I thought love would be easier to replace than legacy." His voice broke, heavy with regret. "But I was wrong. I was so wrong." Sophie wiped her cheeks. "And now?" Cole looked at the twins. Two small faces, two tiny lives, unaware of the storm surrounding them. The steady rhythm of their breathing pulled him toward a truth he could no longer ignore. "Then let me do it right this time," he said, quietly. "Let me fight for them, for you." For a moment, the room seemed to hold its breath. Sophie stared at him, torn between hope and heartbreak. Cole, this isn't just about showing up. It's about staying. And when the cameras leave, when your family turns on you, when the world decides to pick sides again. He nodded, his eyes glistening. Then I'll stay, even if I have to stand alone. Outside the hospital, the noise was growing. Reporters were everywhere. Bright lights, microphones, rumors flying like sparks. Cole Preston spotted at Dallas Medical. Was the billionaire's runaway wedding about secret twins? Inside, none of it mattered. Cole stood, walked over to the babies, and brushed his thumb across one tiny hand. Their fingers curled instinctively around his. The warmth of that touch shattered the last of his fear. I choose them, he whispered, over everything. For the first time, the weight of his name felt smaller than the heartbeat under his palm. The moment stretched, quiet, sacred, until his phone began to buzz on the table. He looked down at the screen. Board of Directors. The message preview glowed cold and final. Cole, this stunt has gone too far. Step down or be removed as CEO. He closed his eyes, exhaling slowly. Fate had made its move. Now it was his turn. The phone kept ringing. He didn't reach for it. The glass doors of Dallas Medical Center slid open, and the noise outside hit like a wave. Reporters, photographers, and bystanders crowded the steps, shouting questions, flashbulbs bursting like lightning. The evening sky burned gold against the glass towers of the city, and in the center of it all, Cole Preston stepped forward. No entourage, no bodyguards, no walls left to hide behind. His designer jacket was draped across his arms, shielding the two tiny bundles he held close to his chest. The twins shifted softly beneath the fabric, unaware of the frenzy surrounding them. Cole, over, here! Mr. Preston, are those your children? Did you leave your bride for her? Each question sliced through the air, but he didn't flinch. He'd spent years letting other people write his story. His family, the media, the board, but not anymore. This was his truth now. He stopped at the top of the steps, the glow of sunset painting him in amber light. For a heartbeat, everything went still. Then, in a steady, clear voice that carried through the chaos, he said, "Meet my children." The crowd fell silent. Cameras stopped clicking for just a second. Cole adjusted the jacket gently, revealing the soft edges of two small faces. Sleeping, peaceful, untouched by the world that waited for them. His expression softened, his voice low but firm. "I'll never hide them again." The words hung in the air, simple and final. The city had seen the billionaire, the CEO, the heir. But this was the man behind all of it, a father standing in the open, finally unafraid. Somewhere above, in a quiet hospital window, Sophie watched through the glass. Her eyes glistened as she pressed her palm against the window pane. She didn't need to hear him to know what he'd said. The truth was written in the way he held them. Steady, protective, certain. A tear slipped down her cheek, but it wasn't from pain. It was relief. Maybe for the first time she wasn't fighting alone. Inside his mind, Cole's thoughts ran like a voiceover, steady as his heartbeat. Sometimes fate doesn't wait for permission. Sometimes love isn't lost, it's just late. He looked down at his children, the corners of his mouth lifting into a quiet, genuine smile. A reporter shouted, "Mr. Preston, what happens now? Are you still CEO?" He looked up, meeting the cameras head-on. "Titles come and go," he said, "but this is forever." The flashbulbs returned, brighter than ever. But this time he didn't hide. He simply turned toward the waiting car, the baby safe in his arms, the sunset spilling warmth over all of Dallas. And in that moment, Cole Preston wasn't the billionaire running from scandal. He was the father running toward redemption. When a man finally chooses love over power, everything changes. If stories like this remind you that redemption is still possible, subscribe, not for the story, but for the truth behind it. As the sun dipped behind the skyline, Cole stood still for a moment outside the hospital doors. The twins nestled against him. The cameras kept flashing, but he didn't look at them. He looked toward the horizon, the future, where for once he didn't have to run. Thank you for watching this story to the end. If you enjoyed this story, you will surely love the next one. It's as crazier and more intriguing as you can ever imagine. So do check it out, and do well to click on the subscribe button and turn on notifications for the next story